So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at the top of the hill near the monastery and thought to record a short Owada for the internet. So I thought that maybe I could start with a little meditation so I can lean forward a bit and arch the spine and look about 3 feet in front and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, you can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, you can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose, around the face, you can just let those relax. And can watch the breath at the tip of the nose. Trying to bring awareness all the way through the in-breath. As the in-breath turns to the out-breath. All the way through the out-breath. And as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to make awareness as continuous as possible. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open the eyes and do a short Ovada for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So I hope that everybody is having a great day wherever it might be. And just recently had this opportunity to go on a wandering tour for about 6 days. So a fellow monk and myself, we walked over this mountain, which is nearby, and went through the forest and walked along the roads to some solitary kutis that are located close by the monastery. And it was very inspiring and lovely to stay in these kind of beautiful places of nature, and also nice to try out some of this practice of wandering. And so in the original time of the time of the Buddha and the time more recently of the forest tradition in Thailand, most of the monks were wanderers. They were homeless, in the sense that they spent a lot of the year kind of wandering from place to place, and sometimes would return to the same place for vasa. So the Buddha would often return to the same monastery, to Jetavana, for the rains retreat. But other than that, they were free to wander. And this lifestyle of wandering is one that is conducive to the spiritual life in a lot of different ways. In one sense, it stops one from having too many possessions. One can't carry too many things as one wanders along. Basically, whatever one can fit in one's bags, one has to carry that from place to place. And so if there's anything unnecessary, then one starts to feel like throwing it away and not taking it along with one. So this lack of possessions also helps to take one's mind one more step away from the world. The less possessions that one has, the less one needs to worry about keeping them, the less one needs to worry about protecting them. And as a result, one's mind can detach from these things to a certain extent and naturally turn more inwards. There are also these kind of other elements of walking that one may find like unconducive or challenging. One is that it can be a bit noisier unless one is walking through forest paths. This is kind of a nice thing, style of walking. If one can find forest paths to walk through, that's the best way. And to stay in the forest, this is the most inspiring. But from time to time, one might find oneself walking along roads and walking through villages, kind of quite noisy and maybe a little bit distracting. But even this can be turned to one's advantage, because there are these rules that the Buddha lays down, and so one has to develop sense restraint in areas that are sometimes not so easy to develop sense restraint, areas that are a bit more difficult to develop sense restraint. If one were to stay in a place all the time that was noisy or unconducive or something like this, that might be bad. But from time to time, when one has no other options, when the situation calls for it, then it may be beneficial. It may be something that brings more strength to one's mind to try to test oneself in these situations. Again, not taking that on as a lifestyle or as a principle, but when the situation calls for it, calls for being in these kind of bit noisier environments, walking through these villages or so, then that's a time when one can learn to practice restraint in that situation. So this kind of restraint that one learns to practice or can learn to practice is also something that helps to turn the mind inwards, helps to turn the mind away from attachment to external things and more towards looking for a safety within the practice of the Dhamma, within one's own mind. Another nice thing about wandering is that one becomes a bit uncertain about one's destination. And this kind of uncertainty has a twofold aspect to it. On the one hand, it can be experienced this time. I'm not super experienced, but the experience this time was kind of it has this kind of liberating aspect to it. One can feel very free because ahead of one there's not necessarily a set schedule. One has to be back by this day. There may be a kind of certain expectation, a general schedule, but one has this feeling of freedom that one can just keep going. You want to stay an extra day here? Okay, let's stay an extra day. You want it, instead of turning left, let's turn right, let's do. And this is a kind of feeling of freedom that one can gain from homelessness, from having few possessions, and from being uncertain about where one will stay the following night. This kind of freedom is something that can be a little bit fun, a little bit kind of uplifting in a way. It makes the practice of the Dhamma not just be something, it has this kind of element of interest to it, interesting aspects to it. It's kind of don't know where one's going to go next, don't know what one might see or who one might meet. And this aspect of uncertainty also has another side to it, which is that, again, it doesn't provide one's mind any safety to rest in. Sometimes there's these even kind of mental ways that a mind will mentally latch onto something and hold on to it in such a way that it's subconscious. And so even subconsciously knowing that tonight I'm definitely going to sleep here or here or here, and there definitely won't be any, having this ability to plan is something that can give the mind a certain sense of safety in the external world. And even subconsciously, the mind will tend to rest there more, can tend to seek safety there more. But when there's an appropriate balance, maybe not too dangerous, but when there's appropriate balance for in a wandering practice between uncertainty and, one wouldn't want to go wandering in a war zone, say, but wandering along normal routes through the forest, these kind of things, then this sense of uncertainty turns the mind inwards. Kind of because one can rely less on knowing exactly where one's going to sleep, all these different things where the mind finds safety and comfort. Instead, the mind will go inwards, can tend to go inwards more to try to find safety in the Dhamma, safety in Buddhist practice, safety in meditation, safety in virtue. And so this external lifestyle was something that the Buddha, a lifestyle of wandering was something that the Buddha modeled for his disciples. He lived wandering, actually died on the road in a small nondescript town. It was called Kusinara. And he was 80 years old and he kept wandering even with a back injury. So as the great teacher who kind of modeled the way of practice in all of his behaviors, this lifestyle of wandering was something that he set up and led by way of example for his disciples. So in all these ways, this practice of homelessness, this practice of wandering, this practice of uncertainty can help to turn the mind inwards, can help to make the mind less subconsciously attached to safety, the safety of knowing where one will sleep, can make the mind more resilient if it has to learn to put up with wandering through villages, noisy places, where one would have to restrain one's senses. This restraint of the senses can turn one's mind inward as well. And this practice of wandering can also turn one's mind inwards because one becomes unburdened like a homeless person. The Buddha describes it like a bird who travels taking only its wings and goes wherever it likes. In the same way, a monk just takes whatever requisites, he's just the robe and bowls, is what the Buddha says, and goes wherever he likes. And so one's mind is lifted from the burden of possessions and can turn more and more towards the Dhamma. So those are just a few reflections on the benefits of this lifestyle that the Buddha established for his monks. And that was carried down through the ages by his monks and by traditions in various times and places in the Buddhist world, so that this lifestyle is still available in the present day, and that one can live in such a way that one wanders, and with few possessions, and with uncertainty about where one will sleep, where one will eat, and lose one's refuge in these things, but learn to gain a more secure refuge in the Dhamma, having the Dhamma as one's refuge, having the Dhamma as the place where one seeks safety, until one can reach the point where one doesn't need to seek safety in the external world at all. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and hope that everybody has a great day wherever it might be, and wishing all the blessings of Dhamma practice. Pati Pati Saranai.